This podcast includes unapologetic logic and reason and may not be suitable for all audiences. In a world full of nonsense, he's been called the voice of uncommon common sense. He sees the abnormal that many find normal. Author and award-winning speaker, he is Chris.
U.S. deaths hit 53,983 yesterday. 54,000 deaths because of the coronavirus. Experts worry that quarantine fatigue is starting to settle in. And wait till you hear how they know that you're not staying in your house. It's going to blow your mind. It really is. Response to the coronavirus splinters into acrimony and uncertainty. I got to tell you, quite honestly, uncertainty, probably like I've never seen it before in my life. So much uncertainty in so many different areas, so many different ways. The chaos is unbelievable. New York City tailor defies a state order, says he's opening his doors come hell or high water. More and more I hear business owners saying things along similar lines. Question is, will people show up? I don't know. Michigan lawmaker apologizes for wearing the Confederate flag mask. You might be thinking, what an idiot. Why would somebody do that in this age of sensitive time and era? Look, I would say this, don't wear a mask that you would regret later, but there's a little more to this story than it seems. I'm not even sure that it was a Confederate flag. But he goes on to defend the Confederate flag anyway. I give you my thoughts on all that, political and otherwise. Hawaii is telling visitors we'll pay you to leave. Not a bad deal. Not exactly. Researchers are warning that getting the Wuhan flu will take 13 years off your life. I got an issue with the math on that, but it's an interesting story all the same. Spike in ingesting cleaners, meaning people drinking household cleaners, meaning more people did it following Trump's comments. I don't know if you've been following this at all. God, I can only hope not. I don't know why I even know it's going on, but this is the time we live in. Basically, you're witnessing Darwinism at its finest, as best as I can tell. The World Health Organization says that there's no evidence that recovery from the coronavirus gives people immunity to it. That is a big, 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 big problem. Meat threat widens with new shutdowns. Meaning that there's some issues in the food supply chain, which I would expect there's going to be all kinds of issues with all different kinds of supply chains and services and all kinds of other things. But the food supply chain is definitely something to keep an eye on. I'll tell you before I let you go today what I would be doing, what I am doing. Chicken plants scramble. Some farmers destroy their crops. Frustrated parents giving up on homeschooling. They say it's harder than it looks to teach a couple of kids. Oh, yeah. My daughter, she's definitely, gone into test mode a few times, if you know what I'm talking about. Back to work math gets messy for newly unemployed. Oh, yeah, that's right. No more stay-at-home order means no more free checks. Time to get back to work. I think that most people want to. I think most people want to get back to work. You're always going to have the freeloaders that would rather stay at home and do nothing and get paid for it, but that can't last forever. I would think. Tough to make it last forever, don't you think? Tough to get by very long on $1,200. Now you know. Maybe that's what that was, just a float out there to see how grand socialism really is. How's $1,200? That's the starting price of your freedom, my friend. $1,200. I'm going to get into all those stories, but I want to start with a different question. Why is Japan not getting hit with the coronavirus? Why do you have these pockets? I don't know. Those are the things I want to talk about. How was your weekend? I don't know. What did I do? Saturday, I was busting my butt cutting up this bamboo from my yard. There's just something, and I'm like George Bush in this regard, or Ronald Reagan. I like chopping firewood and riding horses. I actually do. I don't get to ride horses very often, but I've been riding horses since I was a kid. I've been chopping firewood since I was a kid. I've been shooting guns since I was a kid. Been hunting since I was a kid. I like being outside. What can I tell you, Saturday? I spent the day out there, and I'll tell you what, I took a beating for it. Whew! My back, my legs. Saturday night, I poured a little vodka, not because I like vodka, because it's all I have left. And anyway, I started getting these cramps in my legs. I cut down this bamboo, I don't know, back like a month or so ago. We have this bamboo grove. I'm not trying to get rid of it. It's got a metal barrier underground. It's beautiful. It's really beautiful. It's really well done. Well, anyway, got a little thick in there, and there was a tree nearby that a branch broke off of that broke some of the bamboo. So I wanted to get in there, clear some of that out, thin it out a little bit. Did all that. That was back-breaking. Good Lord. Then I had the pile of bamboo in the yard, let it dry out a little bit. Well, now I was cutting it up into pieces, getting ready to burn it in the fall once it's dried out nicely. We'll see how that goes. I've gotten mixed reviews on that. But here's the other big thing that I did this weekend. You ready for this? This is a first for me. I narrated a children's book. Yeah, it's like a 10-minute long children's book about construction vehicles. And Big Chris is the voice behind that. It was a little community project for, kids stuck at home and their parents can't stand the sight of them anymore, so they're just sticking them in front of a screen and running and hiding in the bathroom. You know what I'm talking about. Why is Japan not getting hit with the coronavirus? Well, if you look at Japan adjusted for population, the number of cases and deaths are something like a quarter or less than the United States. I don't know. I look at that whole situation. I say to myself, well, could it be because Japan has no political value to China or the globalists? Awfully ironic, don't you think? Why are these different areas untouched? No political value. Meanwhile, Europe and the United States is getting slammed. Well, the official answer on this issue in China is that it's being blamed on testing or lack of, which keeps being the drum that gets beating. Testing everywhere has been an issue. It's been an issue here. They keep testing more and more and more, and the numbers keep going up. And each time they do, they try to, revise these different projections. But so far, none of those projections have gone in the direction of a worsening condition with this thing. So there's kind of an agreement, if you will, that there's this flawed data, which is something that I've been barking about for a while now. Everybody agrees that there's some kind of problem with the data. I think the agreement is that it's twofold. There's not enough of it. Not enough people have been tested even now. And that there's not a standardization of the reporting. So you got some people, they have somebody in the hospital, they test positive for it. They were already there for heart failure. They're putting it down as a corona death. In other places, like Japan, unless they've had certain corona-specific symptoms for like 4 days or something like that, they don't get listed as having it. I guess whatever. China trying to keep the numbers low. I mean, you could get all kinds of goofy conspiracies and thoughts about all that, but who really knows? It's just different the way it's being done, which brings up a big question. Why isn't there some standardization of the reporting criteria? I don't know. So how much different are things in Japan really? They've been following pretty much the same timeline as us, pretty much been having to follow more or less the same sequence of events, more or less the same stuff happening. Just a whole different set of numbers being reported. No focus on that, really. No focus on that. Here we just beat up the president and the governors and anybody in the opposite political party. Japan is an incredible place. I've been to Japan. I was stationed in Okinawa for 6 months, and from there we also went up to mainland Japan, where we deployed to Mount Fuji. There's a training area up there. It's phenomenal. We actually climbed to the top of Mount Fuji. For me and my big head, it was like the most difficult physical thing I ever did in my life, carrying my fat self up that giant mountain. There was like little old ladies, these Japanese women that I guess like live on the mountain. They're on the side of the mountain. They're like running up and down. They're passing me. Come on, come on. Like, all right, Mama-san, take it easy. I'm a little bigger than you are. Anyway, it's a beautiful place, incredible country. The Japanese people are incredible. Tokyo is very sterile. It's kind of weird. And I wonder if this isn't part of the whole thing with them experiencing this a little bit differently. I think their culture is much more lends itself to the idea of, number one, obedience, number two, this idea of sterility, working together as a society as opposed to just sitting around and whining and complaining about everything like Americans do. So when you go through Tokyo, one of the things that was very strange to me, now, you got to remember, I was like 19 years old at the time, so I had kind of a different lens on at that time. And, through a 19-year-old Marine who was spending a lot of time in the field who just wanted to get drunk and meet girls, you know what I mean? That was the vision. that was the perspective, okay, that everything else lied on. But one of the things that struck me in Tokyo, there's no graffiti in Tokyo. And you say, well, that must be nice. It is kind of nice. And it's kind of weird. Like, the people seem to be oppressed. And I seem to remember some stories about a very aggressive criminal justice system that you didn't want to get caught up in. I don't know. But I thought to myself, wow, I wonder if that's part of it, that, the way the Japanese people might respond to something like an order from the governor to stay in place, self-quarantine or something like that. If that would be handled, the response would be different in Japan than it would be here. Maybe. But so far everybody seems to be blaming it on the testing. Amazing how even something like this just turns into this political weapon. You don't know what to believe. You don't know what to make of things. U.S. sees a record number of coronaviruses in a day, but the mortality rate slows. 927,000 Americans now infected, a jump of 36,000 in 24 hours. Death toll reaches 53,400. It's a nasty virus from everything that I can gather about it. It's not something that you want to get. Not something that you want to necessarily expose yourself to. And I'll just say this. If it were affecting children the way it's affecting the elderly, we'd be freaking out about it. If this were people's kids getting sick and dying, everything would be locked down. You wouldn't be able to get gas. If hospitals were overrun, we'd be in trouble, but that's not the case, right? Even in a million cases. I think the big question in all this right now is, why couldn't we quarantine the sick and the elderly only in order to somewhat save the economy? I don't know. Because, see, the bad news is, and there's always all these different ways of looking at this stuff, and I understand that. And look, nobody really knows for sure, right? Nobody really knows for sure. But the argument that I'm making, at least from a learning for next time perspective, if there is a bad second wave, well, we're compromised economically now. Suppose we got to go through round 2 of this, just not even get worse, just another round of exactly what just happened, say in 9 months. What kind of position are we going to be in to borrow another $3 trillion? Will toilet paper and paper towels be back in stock by then? I doubt it. And people are frustrated now. There seems to be this level of commonality, I guess you could say, across the whole world. If you look at the numbers in terms of how long people are willing to stay self-quarantined, it's right at about 2 months, it seems to be. You might be able to push that a little bit, but not a lot further. It looks like it's going to be longer here where I'm at. Outside of Philadelphia, they're going to keep things kind of tight. I don't know. That has some of the so-called experts worrying that there's this idea of quarantine fatigue that's starting to affect people en masse, starting to affect the population. I was reading the other day, the president said he's been in the White House for months now. I don't know if he meant nonstop. I don't, and I didn't hear it firsthand. I was reading it. But I thought, wow, if he's had to be quarantined, I wonder how that's affecting him. I mean, you say, well, it must be nice to be quarantined in the White House. I'm sure it's better than a lot of other places, but everybody likes to get out once in a while, am I right? But here's what's kind of troubling about this to me. Experts worry that quarantine fatigue is starting to settle in. First of all, who are these experts? What are you telling me? There's quarantine experts? When did they become a thing? Who is these experts? And the way that they determine that there's this quarantine fatigue setting in is because they're watching people's movements via the cell phone data. And they can see that people are staying home less. Those phones are tracking us. And there's a lot of things that can be accomplished with that. There really is. There's a lot of good that can come from that kind of data and information and tracking. But man, it's a little freaky to say the least. Am I right? That kind of invasion of privacy, exposed to who knows who for whatever purposes. I don't know. I'm telling you, one of these days, I think I'm going to get rid of this thing. I'm going to go back to a flip phone. I don't know. Would you? Response to the virus, splinters into acrimony and uncertainty. Literally uncertainty, probably like I've never seen it before in my life. This is from Reuters. 6 weeks after President Donald Trump declared a national emergency over the coronavirus, the United States is deeply divided over the correct economic and health response. What was meant as a grand experiment in fast action? Okay. Nearly $3 trillion in federal support to keep the United States companies and individuals afloat as economic activity froze. Now it's all slipping into the finger pointing and uncertainty. I said this many times before. Be careful who you vote for, because you put these idiots in office and you think that there's all this chaos and division, and then all of a sudden something happens and they sing Kumbaya and say, we'll go back to that after we solve this virus problem. I don't think so. I realize that, we have two parties in this country, obviously, but I realize what they stand for. You've got the Democrat Party, which is essentially being motivated and guided by the government worker unions, police, teachers unions mainly, AFSCME, government workers union. Those three unions are the big three. Those three government worker unions. There's probably some other influence and collusion type dealings with some of the private sector unions as well. That's the Democrat Party. Yeah, they do represent some others that they try and bring into the fold, I think, in order to gain an edge in terms of popularity. Minorities, whether it be by race, gender, religion. Environmentalists, they try to capture that market. Then you have the Republicans that essentially represent business. And I think that the big problem in all that is that everybody outside of government worker unions and outside of business owners kind of gets left out, not really represented, which is the bulk of the population. Now, some of that I think is warranted. I don't have a problem necessarily that labor has an influence. It kind of should, as should maybe religion. Religion's exercising no political influence in this country. Maybe that's a problem. But you've got the labor influence, the business influence absolutely is important. I think it is. I think the government needs to listen to the business people. And I think a lot of the division on what to do, I think we've seen a lot of what not to do. That's for sure. We're going to get through it. It's going to be all right. This debt thing, I don't know how that works out. New York City tailor defies a state order, says he's opened his doors come hell or high water. More and more I hear business people telling this. Friends of mine that are business owners are telling me they're just owning it. The guy, apparently this tailor was decided it was a non-essential business during the pandemic. The owner says, yeah, well, I'm opening anyway. He says it is essential. He says, why is a liquor store essential and I'm not? Which is an argument that I hear, same type of argument coming over and over again from my friends that own businesses. Why this and not this? Where's the fairness? Well, I think that the challenge for the governors and the planners of these things is to enact rules that can be lived by and keep as many people home as possible. And maybe there's a threshold and all that, and maybe I don't even know what that threshold is. But I get it. I get the frustration. It's time to open. That's the bottom line. Michigan lawmaker apologizes for wearing the Confederate flag mask. So he says it wasn't a Confederate flag mask. Then he goes on to say, hey, even if it was, the Confederate flag is part of our country's history, and we ought to be teaching it to our kids. And kids ought to know what that flag stands for. And the reporter says, what does it stand for? And he says, the Confederacy. Obviously, which is the Confederate States. Now, let me tell you a couple things. First of all, I don't recommend getting masks that are overly edgy. I just wouldn't. Just get a simple, solid color. You know, you want to wear something when you're home cutting the grass, it's fine. But as far as, in the office and out to the stores and stuff like that, just get a blue or a tan or black or something like that. Keep it real simple. Anyway, he says, the Confederate flag stands for the Confederate States, which is he said it stands for the Confederacy, which is the Confederate States, which is essentially the Southern states. And I don't know if you know this, I was born in South Carolina. I'm a good old boy. At heart, anyway. I don't really remember it. I don't remember it all living down there, actually. Not as a kid, anyway. When I went back as an adult, 17 years old, I remember that pretty well. But I'm going to tell you right now, some of the best people you find anywhere are Southern people, Southerners. It's different down there. There's just something about it, that Southern hospitality, that Southern gentleman, that Southern nastiness in some cases. Hawaii is telling visitors that they'll pay them to leave. So, normally, of course, in Hawaii, tourism is a big thing. They're looking to attract people. They want people to feel welcome. They want positive reviews. They want everybody smiles and happy and tell their friends. And now, for people that come there, they want them to quarantine for 14 days. They want them to self-quarantine. Can you see the nature of this problem? That you decide, or maybe you already had plans. I'm just going to go to Hawaii and wait this out. Boy, I wish I would have had the forethought to do that. So now they have this grant money for people that don't have the means, that they just turn around and ship them back if they can't deal with a 14-day quarantine in Hawaii. There's worse situations you could be in. But they'll pay. They'll pay to send them back. I don't know. They've sent apparently already 20 people back. People from Guam, Los Angeles, Alabama, and Denver. Interesting, right? People within the country even. And the people there representing this agency, what agency is it? Hawaii Tourism Authority. They're saying, look, we sent these people back because they were irresponsible in traveling here during this pandemic, knowing that we're trying to keep Hawaii safe from the spread of the disease. So they're not even being too nice about it. Basically saying, here, don't let the door hit you in the butt, right? Researchers are warning that getting the Wuhan flu will take 13 years off your life. You know how I feel about researchers and study says. So what they did is they looked at this information that they got from Italy. Information they got from Italy. People that were sick and ended up dying because they got the coronavirus, and then they basically added this year factor based on these different conditions to find out how much longer they likely would have lived had they not gotten the coronavirus. Well, that's all well and good, and the answer to that equation based on the data that they studied was 13 years. If you have any of those conditions, I guess you might argue that you have 13 years less to live, but I don't think that that's a safe average, that's for sure. So now they're saying that more people have drank liquid cleaners because of something that Trump said. I don't know if you got a chance to really see this in the breakdown of it. It's really kind of a shame, all kidding aside, given that, not everybody in this country is fortunate enough to have an IQ over like 2. In all seriousness, how do you protect yourself? How do you protect everybody when the baseline, when the starting point is an IQ of 2? I listened to what Trump said, and I don't get it. He didn't say anything out of turn there at all. They twisted that. They're always looking for that gotcha with Trump. Have you noticed that? They want that gotcha. All this, I guess, based on some spike in phone calls made to New York City health authorities. So, whatever. I don't even know why that's a story. The World Health Organization says there's no evidence that recovering gives immunity to people that had the virus. That, I think, has the potential to be a really big problem. If you're going to say that people that got it, that they are just as vulnerable as they were when they got it, I think you're going to have a lot of people that are pretty nervous about that. Very nervous, maybe. I don't know. It also creates a big problem in terms of this thing sticking around. I don't think so. I got this weird gut feeling that this thing is going to disappear. What do you say? I don't know. We'll find out. Meat threat widens with new shutdowns. Look, there's issues going on with the food supply chain. This is the evidence of that. Something to keep an eye on. Chicken plants scramble. Some farmers destroy their crops. Some of this maybe is normal. Some of it's maybe sensationalized. I just look at the shelves in the food store when I see that they're out of certain things, and not a lot. It's not like the shelves are empty. I've never seen it. Not even in the storm conditions have I ever seen it. I've never really had to go to the food store in a storm condition because we don't normally live stocked up for the next 15 minutes. We actually plan a little bit further in advance. I don't wait for the World Health Organization or FEMA or whoever to come in and save me if we get more than 6 inches of snow. You know what I'm saying? That's just me. I don't know. They're saying that the part of the big problem is that there's no distancing, no social distancing in these meatpacking plants. But you know what I wonder about that? Aren't they like dressed up in full garb, masks and gloves and eye protection? Wouldn't that make, if you're dressed up like that as part of your normal work garb, wouldn't that be kind of normal? Frustrated parents giving up on homeschooling. Jen just said this the other day. She said, it's like a full-time job doing it for one. She said, I couldn't imagine if I had to do it for 2, 3, or 4. Crazy. Back to work math gets messy for newly unemployed. Well, so now we're going to go from a situation where everybody is comfortable. You get paid to sit home and do nothing, even if the checks were delayed a little bit. Now people got to get back to work, and it's creating some problems. Some of those for me and my family, by the way. What do you do when schools are closed but work isn't? What do you do when you don't have access to certain travel? Something Jen brought up to me. We don't have immediate family close by. What happens if Jen and I get this virus? We got a 5-year-old in the house, 3 dogs, and we can't get out of bed. Pooey. All right, listen. I know I've been talking for a while here. I want to give you my take on the current situation, which is something that I may do here. We'll see. A little current action report, if you will. And then there's some emails that I want to get into. Great stuff. You guys have been great. Here's my take on the situation. Here's my assessment of what's going on. Travel is an issue. Air travel is basically non-existent right now. If you've got relatives on the coast or far away that have medical needs or some other need or some other issue, or you just want to be close to, you might want to reconsider all that. When is air travel going to get better? Well, maybe tomorrow, maybe never. Nobody knows. There's a lot of uncertainty. I think you got to weigh the importance or the need that you have for that kind of travel. I also think, by the way, it's not even just limited to air travel and long-range travel, but gas, oil, the price going down below zero. It's in a frenzy right now with no signs of that bouncing back. What does that mean? Sooner or later, it's going to mean that production capacity gets shut down. You can see where that goes. So, it might be a good idea to keep an extra can or two of gasoline around. I don't know. Food, slow and low, I think, but stable. I don't think there's any reason to be going crazy with food. I would keep stocking up a little bit at a time. That's what me and my family are doing. We maybe, buy 10% more than we normally would, stuff that we use to grow our pantry, which is something we'd be doing right now anyway. But Jen thinks we need to have about 6 months' food on hand. I think that's a lot, but we're going to work in that direction. I'll keep you posted how it goes. My situation here is a little unique. It's going to take us a little bit of time to get up to that. But that's what I'd be doing with food. You should be anyway. I think we all got a little lax in terms of preparedness for anything that goes. I've said this before. You don't know. There's never any warning. That's why they're disasters. Usually not much of any. The economy, money, employment. What I would be doing right now is keeping some cash on hand. Not a lot. I'm watching the lines at the bank. I can't believe it. People still trying to get money out. Look at what you need, where you might need to go, what you might need to do, and keep a little bit of cash on hand. What if the internet goes down, power goes down? What if you can't use your ATM cards and credit cards and things like that? What if there's a problem you can't get to the bank? And the other thing I would say about the economy right now, I would make any decisions to change. I wouldn't do it abruptly, but I would do it early. If you've got to make adjustments, if you've got to bite the bullet on something, say credit-wise, now's probably the time to just do it, get it done, bite the bullet, and move on. Because there's just a lot of uncertainty, and I don't think you want to go into that with any more, any more vulnerable than you need to. Keep a little cash around, get rid of some of that debt if it's a problem for you. And be smart. Be smart with your money. A couple of people reached out to me. This was very nice. Didn't leave a name. Hey, Chris, just a shout out to say thanks for your show. Shouting out from Huntsville, Alabama. I've never been to Huntsville. Have I been to Alabama? I do not believe that I have. For some reason, I think I might have driven through one time, but I have to check on that. He says, enjoy your great topics with a sensible approach. Thank you. Thanks for your service to our great nation. My pleasure, sir. I'm a non TV full-time podcast kind of guy. I got to tell you, I spend a lot more time listening to the podcast than I do watching the boob tube, that brain rot machine. He says he's retired Air Force, says he likes the patriotic approach with faith and love for our country. Hoorah, thank you, sir. He says, thanks for what you're doing. Be blessed. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Our buddy Chris from Oregon. I might have mentioned this before, but I'm going to mention again. He emailed me. He had the gall, and I thought we were friends, Chris. You know, this really has to make me reevaluate this. He has the gall to explain to me the benefits of bacon. How offended could I be by that? Hey, seriously, a friend of mine, she posted homemade stuffing, like with the big pieces of onion and celery and the bread in there. And I said, oh, I love that stuff. I might even like it more than bacon. It sounds horrible to say that. But in all seriousness, Chris, he brought this up to me, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago. He said, hey, you know, I think he was in response to me saying I was tired of talking about this whole virus thing. He said, yeah, what's going on with the grill, man? You said you got the grill. What's the story? And I said, you know, basically, man, I do a little salt and pepper and, you know, I got this thing down, boom, bam. And I think I kind of got him thinking on the less is more. And I've been kind of running with that. And he said, you know, basically, this is key, by the way. This is absolutely key. And you got it here, Chris. If you're going to wrap shrimp or scallops in bacon, you have to cut the piece of bacon in half because otherwise it takes too long for the bacon to cook. And it just, it way overcooks whatever you're wrapping with, whether it be the shrimp or the scallops. I got to tell you something, by the way. Both are good. Both the shrimp and scallops wrapped in bacon are phenomenal. If you want to kick that up, so take 2 shrimp because it creates a little bit bigger V in the back. Pack that with a little horseradish and wrap that with the bacon. Yeah, how about that? As far as the scallops are concerned, Chris, I've gone the same direction. I eat a fair amount of scallops. I love scallops. Done properly, quite possibly one of my favorite seafoods. I don't know. Crab has that very distinct crab flavor that I love, and maybe you do too. But scallops are just, they're good. They're good for you. And now what I've basically been doing with scallops is a little bit of butter, so no need for salt, and a little cracked pepper on there. Maybe, depending on my mood, a little shot of garlic. Drop them. If you can hit that in a hot pan, and it's best to use a skillet. If you can get that scallop where it's just got that brown on the outside, and almost like the perfect campfire marshmallow in terms of texture. Not quite, but anyway, glad you're enjoying it, Chris. Bacon's good with most things. So then Joe from Edinburgh, I mentioned this little back and forth last week, but there was something else that he said that I don't think I talked about really. And he mentioned that he was going through a divorce, and he stumbled on the podcast, and then he also found my free audiobook, Uncommon Advice for an Extraordinary Life. You can find that at ChristopherScottShow.com. And he said that he also read or listened to, I don't know, Be the Lion. And he said that it changed his life. And he said that he put his head down and worked hard with the do the best you can attitude. And he said it's been a year now, and he goes on to talk about how well he's doing personally, which I'll just keep that personal. And first of all, I would tell you that that kind of feedback, which I get, pretty regularly on those 2 books, boy, that is really my passion. It really is. And this email really kind of motivated me to rethink some of the things I'm working on and where I want to fit all that in there. Hard to stay focused. My son really enjoyed the book Be the Lion. He's actually reading the book right now, Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, which I've talked about on this podcast before. Some interesting stuff in there. And he said, hey, some of that stuff that you put in the book, did you get that from Outliers? I said, yes, I did. That's very true. True statement. But the other thing I wanted to mention, this issue of men going through divorce is something that's not talked about very often. And it can be a very difficult and painful experience. It really can be. And I think it goes both ways. The bottom line is when you have one partner that's set on exploiting the system, or both for that matter, but it's a system that is ripe for being taken advantage of. And even if it's not, I'm going to tell you, personally, I mean, one of the most difficult things I've ever had to struggle with is sitting in a courtroom with my child there. Like, it is the most awful thing you can go through as a parent. It really is just like, how did we get to this point? You just shake your head. And I think especially for men and trying to be a father, when you just lose all control of everything that you held sacred all the way down to your children, and it's now being given up to essentially the control of the court, right, on some level, right, if you're going through a custody thing. And they're not exactly warm and fuzzy about it. Not to men, not in my experience. And I don't want to get into it now, but I just got to the point where I had it, and I just said, no, I'm not doing it. And I don't want to get too far into it now, but, I know a lot of people down here. And it was getting to the point where, I was going to drop a dime, as we used to say in the 70s. You don't hear that anymore. You can't even drop a quarter. It's non-existent. But anyway, I'm glad the books, man, were able to have an impact on your life. It means a lot to me, and I appreciate you sharing that. It motivates me to want to do more. My cousin, who I also mentioned last week, he had reached out to me. And he did have a reason for reaching out other than to stir the family nostalgia that I commented on. And Andy was asking about the doctor in Wisconsin who was put on leave. I don't know if it was paid or unpaid, basically suspended, if you will, for attending a rally. I believe it was a medical type rally in, what do you call it, defiance of the governor's orders out there. And here's the story on that. Basically, a photo showed up on Facebook of the doctor at the rally in violation of the governor's orders, and now the doctor got suspended. How would that happen? I would imagine that it was some supposed friend of the doctor on Facebook saw it, got their back up, and called the hospital. What do I think of it? I mean, number one, don't post stupid stuff on social media. Be very careful. People say to me, all you ever post is food and your dogs and your daughter. Right. I don't even post that much political stuff on my Facebook fan page. It's just really not the place for it. You know what I'm saying? It just isn't. See, at least here in the podcast, there is some vulnerability, but at least it's the forum that allows the opportunity for discussion. I don't know. But the second thing I would say about the doctor in Wisconsin there, Andy, I think he was wrong. Maybe he didn't know it was wrong. I don't know what the facts are. But as a doctor working in that area, I think he's kind of obligated to go along for the most part. Maybe he was trying to make a stand. I don't know if we'll get a follow-up on that. My guess is not. I don't know if it's that big of a deal. My guess is that it had something to do with his field. He didn't really think about it, and he went thinking that somehow it was exempt or whatever if it was still going on. I don't know. I don't know what the story's going to be. Hey, before I let you go, let me give you a little advice, all right? If you want to make more money, you got to be more valuable. The way to be more valuable is to solve a need or a problem. If you're not doing anything to work in that direction of solving needs and solving problems. And when there's lots of problems going on, like right now, there's lots of opportunities. And if you're not looking to work in the direction of those opportunities, then your ideas about wealth, specifically being rich, whatever you define that is, then it's just wishful thinking if you're not actually taking action in that direction. I'm not trying to sell you anything. This isn't a pitch to get into like an MLM team or something like that. I'm just telling you, look at what's going on around you. If you have a business or you want to be in business or you're looking for opportunities, now might be a good time to do that because things are being shaken up a little bit. And if you want to be more successful, ask yourself what it is that you really want and then work in that direction. And do everything you can to cut out most of the distractions. Sometimes you have to give up a little time to be polite, but you got to, for the most part, get yourself focused on the things that it is you want. Maybe come Friday, I'll tell you a little bit more about what I'm doing in my personal life on all that. But above all, protect your most valuable asset, your integrity. And the way to do that, you already know this, do what's right and do the best you can. I plan to be back tomorrow. I hope to see you there. Make it a great day.